Hi guys, I'm Armina Joyce A. Posada from BSE 3A. This topic is all about short circuit test under transformer test. So what is short circuit test? It is one of the most important tests used to predict the behavior of a transformer when conditions are such that its rated load cannot be applied on the shop. It is possible to predict the performance of a transformer at various loadings by knowing all the equivalent circuit parameters. So, malalaman natin itong mga circuit parameters na to by the use of the short circuit test without actually loading the transformer. These tests give the test results which are used to determine the equivalent circuit parameters. By these parameters, malalaman na natin yung efficiency and regulation of the transformer at any power factor condition as well at any load condition. This test is performed to find series branch parameters of an equivalent circuit such as equivalent winding resistance, equivalent impedance, total leakage reactance. Also, it is possible to determine copper losses at any desired load. Sa test na to, usually, lower voltage winding is shorted by a thick wire. So, kaya itong tinawag na short circuit test kasi sinushort niya yung lower voltage. And the other side, higher voltage side, ito yung dito kinakandak yung test. As you can see on the picture, the primary or HV winding ay nakakonekta sa AC supply source. Through voltmeter, itong V, ammeter, itong A, wattmeter ito, and a variac as shown in figure. This test is also called as reduced voltage test or low voltage test. So, bakit tinawag itong voltage test or low voltage test? Because as the secondary winding is short-circuited at rated voltage, yung transformer nakakakuha ng very large current dahil sa very small nitong winding resistance. Kung aalalahanin natin yung Ohm's law, the current is inversely proportional to the resistance. So, pag meron tayong maliit na resistance, meron tayong malaking current. So, pag meron tayong high current, it can cause the overheating and also burning of the transformer. Thus, to limit the high current, the primary winding must be energized ng mababa lang na voltage na enough to produce the rated current in the transformer primary. So, let's proceed na kung paano natin mahanap yung mga constant parameters. So, first, sa equivalent winding resistance or the RE, the resistance of the windings can be obtained roughly by direct measurement with direct current or from the readings of the wattmeter and the ammeter. So, malalaman natin yung equivalent winding resistance by the help of wattmeter and ammeter. Kasi yung formula is RE is equal to the power over I squared. So, yung power natin, malalaman natin sa sinasabi ng wattmeter natin, while the current is yung sinasabi naman ng ammeter natin. So, ang next natin ay equivalent impedance. The impedance can be obtained roughly by direct measurement from the readings of the voltmeter and ammeter. Kung kanina is ammeter and wattmeter yung ginamit natin, dito naman is the voltmeter and the ammeter kasi yung formula natin ay equivalent impedance is equal to the voltage over current. So, yung total leakage reactance natin is equal to the square root of equivalent impedance squared minus equivalent winding resistance squared. So, madali lang naman tong short circuit test na to kasi ma-substitute lang tayo sa mga formula. So, dito, pag meron ka ng equivalent impedance and equivalent winding resistance, hindi ka na mahihirapan pa. So, yun talaga yung unang kukunin bago tong total leakage reactance. Next slide is the input power and the copper loss. So, the total input power is equal to the sum of the copper loss plus the output power plus the iron losses. So, dahil short circuit tayo dito, ang power output natin ay 0. So, ika-cancel out natin yan. Ang matitira na lang is ang matitira na lang sa input power ay copper loss and the iron loss. So, as the iron or core losses are function of voltage, these losses are very small. So, dahil very small lang naman tong natin, iron losses, tapos yung copper losses natin is very large dito. So, tatanggalin na rin natin dito, i-disregard na lang. So, ang matitira for the input power is equal to the copper loss. So, kung ano yung mabasa ng iyong wattmeter, yun din yung copper loss mo. So, para mas maintindihan natin, let's proceed to the sample problem. The short circuit test data are given below per a single phase 5 kVA, 200 volts, 50 Hz transformer. Short circuit test from HP side 20 volts, 12.5 ampere, 175 watts. So, ang nabasa ng ating voltmeter ay 20 volts, yung ammeter natin naman ay 12.5 ampere, and the wattmeter is 175 watts. So, hahanapin natin yung equivalent winding resistance, equivalent impedance, total leakage reactance, and the copper loss. So, from the formula, nung mga diniscuss ko kanina, first, let's find the equivalent winding resistance. RE is equal to the power over I squared. So, ang given na power is 175 all over the current, which is 12.5 squared, is equal to 1.12 ohms. So, next is the equivalent impedance. So, the equivalent impedance is equal to the voltage over the current. So, the voltage is 20 volts and the current is 12.5 ampere. So, it is equal to 1.6 ohms. Next is the total leakage reactance, which is equal to the square root of equivalent impedance squared minus the equivalent winding resistance squared. So, yung nakuha nating ZE is equal to 1.6 ohms. So, square natin yon minus yung nakuha nating RE, which is 1.12 squared. So, ang total nito ay 1.14 ohms. So, last is the copper loss. Power input is equal to the copper loss. So, yung given ng wattmeter natin is 175 watts. So, for the next problem, 50 kVA, 2,200 volts, 110 volts transformer gave the following results. Short circuit test from each V side. So, yung ng voltmeter natin is 90 volts. Yung nabasa ng ammeter natin is 20.5 ampere. And for the wattmeter, 808 watts. So, calculate the circuit constants, which is the equivalent winding resistance, equivalent impedance, total leakage reactance, and the copper loss. So, first is the equivalent winding resistance. Substitute lang yung power and yung current. Makakakuha na tayo ng 1.92 ohms. So, for the equivalent impedance, substitute yung voltage over current. So, meron tayong 4.39 ohms. So, after makuha natin yung equivalent winding resistance and the equivalent impedance, pwede na tayong mag-proceed sa total leakage reactance. So, square root of equivalent impedance, which is 4.39 squared, minus the equivalent winding resistance, which is 1.92 squared, is equal to 3.95 ohms. So, for the copper loss, ulitin ko, yung copper loss is equal to the input power, which is 808 watts. So, madali lang naman tong short circuit test. Just remember the formula and substitute lang. Yun lang po. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening.